This is Shy,
And this is Megan,
and this is the Magical Happy Hour.
a podcast where we share our love for Disney and theme parks, travel tips, and food.
And anything else we feel like talking about.
It's our third episode, and we're going to get into some nostalgia today.
But first, we're going to start with a little bit of news. Fantasmic reopened this week, which is super exciting.
Yeah, I think we are all eagerly waiting the return and seeing what is all happening with our beloved Murphy, who had the tragic fire. How long ago was that?
Been at least a year, I want to say, or about a year.
Yeah, that definitely sounds right. Dining packages are available,
Yes.
and I'd say totally worth taking the time. If you're already planning on eating in the park, definitely plan to visit maybe one of those dining locations, check out a menu, and plan your trip around. If you're planning to see Fantasmic, getting a dining package is definitely going to be beneficial. You don't have to waste time waiting for a spot. I don't even know what it's like trying to hustle to grab one of those spots. You know, that Fantasmic viewing area in Disneyland is not vast. If you're
Not like Disney World.
exactly, we don't have the
Amphitheater and
the whole amphitheater setup is not something we have the luxury of.
Disneyland. But they do their best creating a nice viewing area.
Yeah, and with the help of the dining package, I'd say it's definitely worth it, especially if you're already planning to eat in the park.
And they are offering different restaurants now. So they have always offered, I want to say Blue Bayou and River Belle.
Mhm.
Now they have Rancho del Zocalo, where before I think it was the Hungry Bear.
Yes.
I'm not sure if they ever had any other options.
The only ones that I'm familiar with are Hungry Bear and River Belle. Those are the two dining locations that I've gone to for the Fantasmic package, but they do it as tiers. So obviously Blue Bayou is going to be the top tier. That's going to be your prime viewing area. But honestly, I think that all three of them are great. In the past, at least. I can't speak to what they look like now, those different viewing areas, but I know in the past they were both good, both Hungry Bear and which would be the third tier, and River Belle, which is the second.
Yeah, I'm really excited to go check this out. I have a vacation planned. It's not so much of a vacation. I'm going for a social media event, so stay tuned for that. But I will be going the first week of June, and I'm going to be checking out the viewing areas and the dining packages for Rancho del Zocalo and River Belle. So we'll have a good idea on what that experience is going to be like so that we can come back and share that with you guys. So I'm super excited for that.
Yeah, and maybe while Shy is there, she can grab a picture of what that Blue Bayou menu looks like. I saw that they have some extra priced items on there, but I can't remember what each of those items were. So let us know if the other dining areas also have those.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll do my best to try to get coverage of each of the three locations just so that you guys have an idea so you can pick out which one you would want to do and which one would be best for your family. And financially, the dining packages are a little bit more expensive than having a traditional meal at those restaurants because you're getting the plus of having that separate separate viewing area for you and your family. So just be prepared for that. It's not going to be like the same menu prices that you're used to at those restaurants. It's going to be a little bit more expensive.
Usually you get more for that price though, right? It's kind of like I know at like the quick service dining, like now it's Rancho del Zocalo, maybe they'll have a full meal type of combo situation. Instead of, you order an enchilada, it's just an enchilada.
Right.
Yeah, it'll be like a drink with that, maybe a dessert.
Yes.
Yeah, because I know at the sit down locations, they have a coursed out meal.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha. That makes sense. And I will look more into that so that you guys have an idea of what that looks like for your next trip if you're going to be going during the season of Fantasmic. But with that being said, let's get on into our episode 3. So this episode, if you can't tell by the title, is based on Disney nostalgia. We are going way, way, way back in time to the 50s, 60s, 70s is what I will be covering. Megan is covering the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. You cannot really talk about Disneyland and the history of it without talking about where the idea originally came from. And Megan, if you have any questions, please feel free to chime in, speak up. If something sounds interesting or if something doesn't sound right, let me know. So let's start off with the idea of Disneyland. If you don't know about Walt Disney, he had two daughters, and Saturdays were their daddy daughter days. Really sweet. He would take them to different places and try to do different things with them on Saturdays for them to be able to bond together. And he took them to a merry-go-round one Saturday. And as he was sitting on this bench watching his girls having fun on the merry-go-round, he thought to himself that there should be a place for parents and children to go to where they could both have fun and a place for both parties to be able to enjoy. And so he went home, talked to his wife, Lily, and she said a theme park. Walt, why do you want to build a theme park? They're so dirty. The clientele there isn't always very nice. Why would you want to create that? And Walt responded, that will not be my theme park. My theme park's going to be very clean, and it's going to be a safe, fun place for people to come and enjoy with their families. And you can actually still visit the bench where Walt first had the idea of Disneyland on Main Street at I want to say it's the Disney Gallery. There is that green bench. You can go in there. You can't sit on it or touch it, but you can look at it. And I'm a sucker for things like that. I think it's really special that they have that bench there and that it's something that you're able to go see and to remember Walt.
And that bench, it was originally in Griffith Park?
Yes, I think that's right. Yeah.
You're visiting LA, you want a little touch of Disney magic, but without, the Disney prices or the Disney of it all, but appreciate a history. Griffith Park is a great place to visit and hike, some outdoor activities.
Okay, cool. Very cool. Okay, so by 1950, Walt had already made 13 feature-length films, and he had won 15 Academy Awards already by 1950. And even with all of his success, coming up with the location for Walt's idea did not come easily. So the Burbank City Council would not approve of the construction of Disneyland, and Burbank was the ideal location in Walt's eyes because that's where he had and still has his Walt Disney's production studio. But eventually he would decide on the Orange Grove in Anaheim and take over that area. But the location would be the least of Walt's worries as he had to figure out where he was going to get the money for this project. So Roy Disney, Walt's older brother, was in charge of the finances, and he was very anxious to put money towards Disneyland because of the losses that the company faced during World War II. So he was anxious about investing in it, as well as banks didn't even want to invest in Disney, even despite all of his proven success with his ideas. They didn't want to touch it. And so Roy actually came up with the idea to work with ABC Network, who was kind of struggling with their network at the time. And they came up with a plan to show Walt Disney's Disneyland, which was a weekly TV show where Walt would talk about the construction of Disneyland in order to get people excited to come to the park. And in exchange for bringing more viewers to the ABC channel, they invested $5 million into park funding. And I'm not sure how much $5 million in the 50s is in today's money, but I can imagine that would be insane.
Holy okay. Essentially $65 million. Might as well be $65 million.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a lot of money for especially a company that was struggling at the time.
It certainly paid off considering they're still partnered now. They're still making them a lot of money, I'm sure.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And Walt Disney's Disneyland is a really special show to me. Oh my gosh, I'm going to tear up a little bit. But my mom loves sharing with me that my grandfather, Red, who he passed before I was born, but he would watch Walt Disney's Disneyland and the Wonderful World of Disney with my mom when she was a little girl, and he loved Walt Disney. And when I look at old pictures of him, I'll have to show you one day, Megan. They like resemble each other a little bit. They look a little bit alike. So it's really cool. So
Same vibe.
yeah, definitely the same vibe. So that's just a little special tidbit. So in 1954, Walt is able to begin construction on Disneyland. And do you know well, if you know the year that the park was open, then you know. But do you know the timeline that he gave his workers to finish Disneyland?
Like how quickly he wanted it done?
Yeah.
Oh God. Like within a year?
Yeah. So he gave them a 1-year timeline
Okay.
to complete Disneyland.
Right. Okay. Well, I've heard people be like, well, Disneyland was built in a year,
Yes.
but it's like, okay, it's not the park that we see today.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
I'll get into
It
that.
is not.
I'll get into some of that too when we get into my 80s section
Okay.
because
They start revamping.
Yes.
Yes. So one thing that is, I think it sort of explains why Disneyland is so incredible with their theming is that he used animators from his production studio and they used their technique from motion pictures into creating the park. And I think that's why it really feels like you're there when you're there because you're in a movie. It's like you're in a movie, which is really, really cool. And then finances continued to be an issue for Walt. He was always going over budget, and he would come to Roy, and Roy would tell him, "We're going over budget." And Walt would respond, "I understand, but we're going to do it anyways."
Can I ask before you continue?
Yeah.
I love the fact that it's two brothers on this wild this wild endeavor. Was Roy his older brother?
Roy is his older brother. Yes.
Okay. So you can really see the older brother roping in this like wildly imaginative little brother.
Right.
Which like of course they're both grown men with their own
Yes.
families
Yes.
at this time.
Yeah.
But like I just think about trying to go on that type of business adventure with like
Your sibling.
your sibling. Like what an undertaking. What a thing to unpack.
The patience that Roy must have had.
Yes, he definitely got to flex his creative, like business-wise creative muscles, though.
I
trying
think
to navigate
so.
all that.
I think he had to, right?
Yeah.
What other choice did he have? Walt was going to do it.
Well, I'm curious what you're gonna bring up next because if not, then I have a tiny tidbit also.
Okay, we'll see.
I'm sure you'll touch on it.
Maybe, maybe
I
not.
just
We'll
learned
see.
it today.
So, in order to get this money, Walt ended up having to sell his home in Palm Springs, and he ended up taking out a life insurance policy to come up with the money for Disneyland. And he did it. He ended up borrowing, what do I have here? $50,000 from his company's life insurance policy, which is insane.
So not only putting himself at risk, but putting his family at risk.
Oh, yeah. Walt was risking everything in his life to make this park happen because he believed in it. And I think that's a good lesson for all of us. We should believe in ourselves a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, certainly don't put your family at risk unless you are, feeling really special. But yeah, I mean, theme parks were not popular at that time. Like you said, they had a
No.
bad reputation.
They did. Yeah. So he was really risking it all. And by opening day on July 17th, Walt had invested $17 million into the company. That was 3 times the original budget.
And remember, that, what did I say? $65 million times 3
Yeah.
in today's money.
Yeah. That's insane.
Again, I'm sweating.
It was organized chaos, but chaos indeed.
Holy.
And one of my favorite, is your little tidbit an opening day
No.
story? Okay.
Mm-mm.
Okay. What is your tidbit? I want to hear it.
Oh, that it was, again, Roy's idea to basically license the Disney name.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, because he
sold his name.
Yes.
Also.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't have that in there, but that is something that I also researched. Yeah. Walt gave up the rights to his name as another attempt to raise money for Disneyland. So,
I mean, and essentially what did it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, all of the sacrifices he made put together, that's the only way that this park happens. One of my favorite opening day stories is that the blacktop wasn't completely dry, and it was so hot that day that women's heels were getting stuck into the blacktop.
Oh, oh no. That's
Did you hear that story
yeah.
before?
I have not the heels, but that it was like it smelled essentially.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh
It
my
was
gosh.
so when you look back on reports that day, all that people really recall is there being so many more people, which I will explain why, and it being so unbelievably hot. I mean, it's the middle of July in Southern California.
Yeah, no. No.
It's very, very hot.
And I'm sure you'll touch on it, but I'm sure since there's so many people, there's probably not enough amenities for all those people.
No. And they had a lot of issues opening
To
day.
put it lightly.
To put it lightly. Just to cover a few, one of the issues they had to deal with was counterfeit tickets that had gone out. There were 3 times the amount of people that they were expecting on opening day due to counterfeit tickets.
Counterfeit ticket. So they pre-sold tickets then? People weren't
Yes.
buying them. Okay. Wow.
Yes. So they had sold tickets in advance to, I think, create the excitement for the park or whatever. And so that, they would have a cutoff of their capacity, and then counterfeit tickets came in.
I wonder if anybody has them. Do we have them?
Any of the counterfeit tickets?
Yeah.
No, not that I saw. I know we're going to talk a little bit about the ticket books that come out later that year, but no, I haven't seen anything about the counterfeit tickets. This was the first time that I had heard about it.
Yeah, I've never heard. So on opening day, did they not have ticket books then?
They did not have ticket books.
Okay.
You just had your admission ticket and you got to choose the ride. And then a few months later, they brought in the ticket book to where then you paid for your admission and you paid to go on the ride.
Because they had added more things?
Mm,
Because they wanted to add more things, probably.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. So there's 3 rides that I'm going to give you a little trivia because I know you're into it. There's 3 rides that had some significant issues
Oh my gosh.
on opening day. Do you have any guesses as to which rides?
Okay, I'm trying to remember what rides were open on
Yeah.
opening day. So 3 of them had significant issues.
Yes.
And they're still open?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. The carousel?
Not the carousel.
Okay.
It may have had issues, but it's not one of my 3 listed here. With how their day went, I wouldn't have been surprised if every single attraction had issues.
Right. For the teacups opening day, did they have an
Yes.
issue?
The teacups were falling apart, yes.
Oh,
The
falling
teacups
apart.
started cracking.
They started cracking?
Yeah.
Did they not test them? You'd think that there were amusement parks. You'd think that they had that ride back.
Walt had a 1-year timeline to open this park.
So do you know if they built everything for that park? They didn't buy any of those?
No, for these, they were constructed for the park.
Wow. That was a bad idea. They should have just bought them.
What else? What other rides?
Jungle Cruise open? No.
Jungle Cruise. Yes, it was.
But
It may not have been open opening day, but it was open that first year for sure. But no, that's not one of the rides.
The train?
No.
Huh.
So I'm gonna give you this next one. The Mark Twain was overloaded and sinking on opening day.
Stop.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What? For one, I didn't know that the Mark Twain was open opening day.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking, that's horrible.
And your favorite, Mr. Toad's, there were fuses going out on Mr. Toad's Wild Ride.
Things are just,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a dynamite scene. So
You just think you're in hell, so maybe you don't realize.
it's good.
There's fuses going off in hell. But yeah, there had also been a plumbing strike going on at the time. So Walt had to choose between installing drinking fountains or toilet. Of course, he went with toilets.
Yeah.
And then people complained and accused him of forcing them to buy Coca-Cola products because there were no water fountains.
Like opening day, everyone's like, you're making me spend too much money. And here we are.
Here we are
How
now.
many days later?
How many days later? Many, many.
how many years later? But there are water fountains. There's plenty of water fountains
There's
now.
plenty of water fountains now, okay, people? And water bottle refill stations, too.
Yeah.
Later that fall, coupon books were used for tickets to ride the attractions. So this is where you get the saying of like an e-ticket attraction. It all starts from these coupon books. So an A-ticket attraction was worth about 10 cents, and it was good for rides like the merry-go-round. A B ticket was worth 25 cents for rides like the teacup, and C tickets were for more thrilling rides like the Jungle Cruise. And that's all they had that first fall. But later on, D and E ticket attractions would come in the following years. I wanted to talk about one of Walt's most famous quotes that I feel like is quoted out of context all the time nowadays, and that is Disneyland will never be completed. That is something he indeed said, but did you know that it was actually a response that came from the relentless criticism that he was getting because there were so many attractions that weren't completed and so many attractions that were open in the beginning. And he knew that soon tomorrow would become yesterday. And so in 1959, he started making changes to accommodate this idea. The park needed a thrill ride attraction, so he began construction on the Matterhorn, which would become the first steel tubular roller coaster in the world. And along with the opening of the Matterhorn, 1959 welcomed the monorail and the submarine voyage, all of which are still here today.
And they're all pretty central to the same area, too. It's kind of
Yeah.
fun to think about that
Yeah.
just developed that whole corner.
Yeah.
Interesting choices to put together, but I mean, that's one of the most beautiful corners of the park.
It is. It is gorgeous. As two big non-fans of the submarine voyage, we both really appreciate that area still. And we walk by and we take an awe of, Nemo's Lagoon and how absolutely beautiful it is. Just don't put us in the submarines. We'll appreciate it from afar.
I have been thinking about retrying it. I've only been on it once.
Same.
I felt for a very long time that was enough and I didn't need more. And it sounds like that's kind of the consensus among people, opinion-wise, that it's not the first choice. But I don't know.
Let's make it a challenge. If we get
It was on the first?
No, if we get 1,000 subscribers,
Okay, we'll go on the submarine.
we'll go on the submarine voyage. Sound like a good deal? Okay, awesome. And then we go on to the 60s, which is where the park really starts to expand. We get the first audio animatronics in the Enchanted Tiki Room. We get the Swiss Family Robinson Treehouse, the Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean, and 3 of the 4 attractions that Walt had created for the 1964 New York World's Fair, including Carousel of Progress, It's a Small World, and Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln.
It's a great, big,
Beautiful tomorrow, shining at the end of every day.
now it's at Disney World, but that still exists.
But it still exists, and it's incredible, and I would give anything for them to bring it back to Disneyland because I think it's one of my favorite attractions in all of Walt Disney World. I think because it's so nostalgic and it's just a really nice place to be. It's nice and air conditioned. Everyone's singing. Actually, I think when we went, we were the ones that were singing the most, but that's okay. It was still really enjoyable, and I miss it. I wish they would bring it back to us.
I mean, it'd be cool for them to put anything in the Circle Theater. I love the concept of the Circle Theater and how it's done with the Carousel of Progress is really cool.
It's excellent.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
like how they have the screens that kind of phase in and out of being solid to being see-through. So you're seeing different parts of the home.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, I know different people have different opinions because they change that last scene sometimes to make it more modern.
Yes.
So it is like an ever-evolving attraction.
Yes.
But I know some of those are good predictors that they made at some point, and others they already are outdated. And then we're back to the Tomorrowland argument, but that's besides the point.
No, but it's a very good point indeed. And that is our desire to Disney to please bring back something to that area because it's quite literally going to waste. I think in one area of it, there's a Disney Vacation Club, like bar, lounge, hangout area for DVC members, but that doesn't serve the majority of the park. And I think that it should be something cooler because it has the potential to be something really, really amazing.
Yeah.
So hopefully Disney has plans for that in the future.
Yeah, especially because it's not even in the theater itself.
Right. So 1966 brings us the first new land, which is both of our favorite lands, New Orleans Square. And it also brings us one of the world's greatest tragedies, the death of Walt Disney. Roy Disney, I don't want to talk too much about Walt's death because it makes me really sad, but Roy Disney ends up taking over as CEO, and the company has a really hard time figuring out their direction and where they want to take the company without Walt. A lot of this information I got from the Imagineering Story on Disney Plus. I also have Walt Disney's Disneyland book by Chris Nichols that I got a lot of this information from as well. And I will be citing this stuff in the podcast notes if you guys are interested. When I was watching that video, they were kind of just talking about how there's literally the second episode of that series on Disney Plus is called What Would Walt Do? And everyone is just trying to figure out what they should do next. Walt came in and he had a vision and a direction for everyone and everything. And I remember Fokker, he's one of my he probably is one of my like favorite Disney Imagineers. Fokker came on from the very beginning. He was the car guy. He constructed Autopia. He then constructed the ride vehicles for the Matterhorn and a lot of other projects in Disneyland that were truly out of his comfort zone that Walt pushed him into doing, and because he believed in him. And Bob Gerson, he's an excellent human and an excellent Imagineer. He was sharing how shortly after Walt passed, they were in the office just sort of sitting, and one of his new managers came in and said, "Well, boys, what are we doing next?" And he said all of their hearts kind of collectively sank because they knew they were without the direction of Walt. And with Walt, they were told, what they were doing, and now they all have to kind of come together and figure it out on their own. So when Roy Disney takes over at the end of 1966 and the beginning of 1967, their focus really switches to Walt Disney World and opening that up. And they would open Walt Disney World in the next coming years. And then Roy actually passed 3 months after the opening of Walt Disney World. And it was kind of sentimental in a way that he knew he wanted to make this dream come true for his baby brother, and he did it. And that was kind of like his last gift to the company. And his son didn't have any interest in taking over the Disney company. So at this point, it kind of went into the hands of their proteges, I would say. So I don't have their names written down, but there was 2 gentlemen specifically. I remember them mentioning one had been like Walt's protege and one had been Roy's, and they end up kind of taking over the company. But, one of them was just like Roy's protege from finance. He wasn't like because Roy was the finance guy, right? So he wasn't like the creative mind behind developing. So this was just to paint a picture for you guys. It was just a really difficult time for the company. The 70s bring a little more excitement to the parks. In 1972, we get the Main Street Electrical Parade, which is so cool. It's still around today. Every once in a while, they bring it back. I don't think it's something that's ever going to go away forever. It holds a special place in a lot of people's hearts. I know it does mine from my childhood, seeing it. And even now, one of those songs where the music gets stuck in your head forever and ever. And it's a precious show. I really love that one. We also get Space Mountain in 1975 as an attempt to catch up to thrill rides at other theme parks. And by 1979, we get another thrill ride with the opening of Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. And this attraction would actually replace the mine train through Nature's Wonderland. And that's going to be the last part of my segment, but I wanted to tell a story about my papa, my grandfather. So the first time I went to Disneyland with my papa, he was from Oklahoma, so he really loved the countryside of Disneyland and he loved Frontierland, and that was probably his favorite place to be in the park. And we were outside of Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. And if you had ever met my papa Stan, he was what my family would like to call a big BSer.
A big BS.
Yes.
Okay.
And so he told me that Big Thunder replaced another ride that was in Disneyland, and that he pointed over to where the rivers of America are, and there's this tiny little tunnel. And he goes, "Yeah, there used to be a train that would go through here and it would go over the water." And I'm like, I did not believe a word he said. I was like, there is no way. I'm like, he's just pulling my leg. He's just joking with me, doing his BSing. And later on in life, I found out he was telling me the truth. And you can still see that cave today where the train would come through. And they used a lot of the older buildings from the mine train ride and into that little ending area where you're pulling up through Big Thunder. And I think that was really cool. So that is the start of Disneyland. That's the beginning of Disneyland's history for the 50s, 60s, and 70s. I'm going to pass it on to Megan to talk about the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s.
All right. And we're back. Little break, little interlude. We also forgot to unmute the microphone. So this is kind of like part 2, take 2. That's all right. So moving on to the 1980s, with the 1950s, Shai introduced us to Disney moving into the realm of TV. And the 1950s were seen as the era of TV, whereas the 1980s were seen as the era of the computer. So many of the developments in the park at this time were a reaction to moving towards that technology. But before jumping too far into that, I wanted to touch on the transformation of Fantasyland into New Fantasyland, which opened in 1983. So along with refurbishments came the restructuring of the land, along with new rides and new storytelling elements, mostly seen throughout the facades that contain those rides. So previously, Fantasyland had a look that was more of a fair. So we saw the big tops and very bright colors.
Very colorful.
Whereas now, with the land transformed, it looks more of like a fairy tale village.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we see the clock tower from Peter Pan, as well as the stonework outside of each of the buildings. And then also the inclusion of the evil queen peering out of the curtains above what is now, at this time, Snow White's Scary Adventure. Whereas previously it was Snow White and Her Adventures.
So Snow White's had 3 different names.
Yes.
The attractions had 3 different names.
Yeah.
So it started off as, what was it? Snow White and Her Adventures?
Yes, that's what it started off as.
And then it became Snow White's Scary Adventures. And now it's Snow White's Enchanted Wish?
Yes, something like that.
Something like that. Okay, cool.
And with each of those versions, I guess, the new iterations of the Snow White ride, we see new elements be added, new technology, new things that are appealing to the rider. Previous to it being Snow White's Scary Adventure, Snow White wasn't in the ride.
So really?
Yes. So that was
the theme of those rides back then.
Yeah. So that was a major element of a lot of the dark rides made in that time, those original dark rides, is that you were the protagonist. You were playing that role as a part of the ride. So that
you were supposed to be Snow White.
Yes, exactly. Same with in Toads. That's why you're driving the car. That's why you're having a wild ride. Even though it's called Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, that's the position that you're playing as a part of that attraction. That's the story. But people wanted to see their favorite characters. So Snow White was introduced, and you've kind of seen her in different forms throughout the course of this ride being in existence. And then so with Snow White's Enchanted Wish being the current ride, we see the introduction of this beautiful grand finale.
The happy ending.
The happy ending, exactly. which is done very beautifully. I really enjoyed the finale of that ride.
It's breathtaking. And to go back to what you were saying a little bit about how Fantasyland used to look,
hmm
my understanding, or I've heard that the way Fantasyland looks in Disney World is very similar to how it looked in Disneyland before the refurbished. So, like with the bright colors, and because Walt Disney World in Florida, their Fantasyland looks so different than ours.
hmm
It does have that old, like, fair feel with the tents and all of the, like, it's very brightly colored.
hmm
So I've heard that that's similar to how it looked before they did the refurbishment.
Yeah, from the few photos I saw, it is very reminiscent of that. Like you have, kind of the front of the ride that has the name of the ride on some sort of banner.
Yeah,
Yeah, even though it has the bright colors, it's I guess not more subtle. That was the first word that came to mind, but it's not as deep in the storytelling
got it.
as Disney is. That's how it looks to me, at least.
I see.
Even though I believe they called Disney World Fantasyland, I think they considered that new Fantasyland for them as well.
They had an expansion for
Mm.
their Fantasyland.
Okay.
So their new Fantasyland is like that area where like the teacups are and Dumbo, and that area is like their expansion. That's their new Fantasyland. They expanded it. So they have like Fantasyland A and B, kind of similar to how we have our Fantasyland A and B, which isn't nothing official, but it's like Small World, Matterhorn. That's kind of considered a separate area of Fantasyland than just the core with the carousel and the dark ride.
That makes sense. That's a good way to put it too. A and B.
I feel like that's not right. I feel like it's referred to as something else, but I just can't think of it right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I've seen it referred to anything official.
No, definitely nothing official.
No. But just talking about how the layouts look of these lands that we've come to know and love previous to the new Fantasyland restructuring, I don't really know what to call it. We see a Fantasyland that looks incredibly different, not just stylistically, but the layout of it all. So also during this remodel, we get the Pinocchio ride. We also see the movement of the carousel from between Snow White's adventures and Peter Pan's flight to where it is today, which what was there previously was the teacups. So then the teacups are moved over to where it is today with Alice in Wonderland. Dumbo was located where we think of now as the Red Rose Tavern, or right out front. And what was occupying the space previously, where Dumbo is now, was a pirate ship, which was a quick service restaurant.
That was a quick service restaurant?
Yeah, sponsored by Chicken of the Sea.
No way. That's so cool.
Chicken of the Sea, though.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about that, but I do feel like we are really missing out on having a pirate ship that we could go eat in. That sounds so cool.
Yeah, well, quick service. So I think it was just the outside.
Oh yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense. But even some of their quick services like have tables inside where you could like sit and eat. You're just not necessarily being served. But it would be really cool if you could sit inside there.
It
and
would be
eat.
cool.
That'd be so cool.
Yeah. And I absolutely could be wrong. Maybe you could go inside.
I want to go inside.
I want to go inside. I'm bummed because I think we need a Skull Rock, which was like right behind the pirate ship almost. Please,
Love
Disney.
Full Rock. That's
want-
so cool.
They have one in Disneyland Paris that I got to putter around, and
Oh really?
yeah, we're definitely missing one. But those are kind of the major changes for the layout of the land. And I have a photo that I'm using as reference that I'll include an upcoming Instagram post.
I didn't realize that so much had moved.
Yeah, I thought it was much more gradual of a move, but it also makes sense that they would just do it all during one major refurb.
Yeah.
So to go back to the increased technology in the park, we see a push for more elements that appeal to teenagers and young adults that maybe those demographics weren't as previously appealed to as much by the Disney company. So this is where we see the introduction of Captain EO in 1986, and then Star Tours in 1987. And these were kind of those beginning steps, but also Videopolis actually preceded both of those attractions, which I think really was the catalyst for the introduction of Captain EO because of it being this big dance club using the music of modern artists, like pop music, popular music that was from that time with a bunch of lighting effects, but also videos that were either, different images, or they actually had cameras in Videopolis to record like people dancing to project on those big video screens as well.
Oh, so you could be dancing and see yourself on the big screen.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Oh, yeah.
And was this in Tomorrowland?
This was in the Fantasyland Theater, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So located, right outside the train station back by what is now Toontown.
Okay, got it.
I would imagine it would have been different at the time, considering now it's such a large amphitheater.
Sure.
I just couldn't find very many videos or photos for reference. So if anybody out there has some,
we'd love to see.
Absolutely. So that was in 1985, then Captain EO in 1986, Star Tours in 1987. We're really seeing this trend move along that we'll kind of see continue into the 1990s as well once we get there. But before closing out the decade, we see the opening of Splash Mountain in 1989, which again is looking to appeal to those teens and young adults that are maybe a little bit more on the thrill-seeking side of things. It's not too often that a new thrill attraction is opened in a Disney park. So when one is, it's definitely exciting. People get into it big time.
And Splash Mountain was designed by one of my other all-time favorite Disney Imagineers, Tony Baxter, who is a freaking incredible machine. He's phenomenal. He's done Splash Mountain. He worked on Big Thunder. I want to say Haunted Mansion, but I'm not 100% sure. I think that was maybe a little bit before his time. But he's done a lot of cool stuff around the parks and also played a big role in Euro Disney.
Yeah, I'm sure he's contributed to so many attractions, so many different aspects of the park, even if it's maybe wasn't his major project. But Splash Mountain also used many of the animatronics from the recently closed America Sings that had closed just the previous year in 1988. We talked about those animatronics in a previous episode.
Do you know when America Sings opened?
No, not off the top of my head. Maybe the 60s?
1974 to 1988, according to Wikipedia.
14 years.
Yeah, it's a decent run.
That was in the Circle Theater too, wasn't it?
I believe so. I'm like, okay, so to go back into my segment a little bit, because I missed this, Carousel of Progress was brought to Disneyland from the 1964 New York World's Fair. America Sings then replaced Carousel of Progress. And I think that's where they got the animatronics from.
Oh, yeah.
For America Sings, yeah.
Yeah.
I knew there was some, I was like, where? I'm like, we didn't talk about America Sings opening, so I'm like, I know it had to have been in there somewhere, and I'm 99% sure it was like taken over by Carousel of Progress. So yeah, it's Carousel of Progress and then America Sings.
Yeah.
And then it was
in the Circle Theater?
Mm-hmm.
What was it?
You know what I mean?
Oh. I'm on the edge of my seat over here. What is it? You're beating me to the punch. I haven't gotten there yet.
Sorry.
Take this out. Shai's just rattling off a bunch of stuff I've never been a part of. All right. So moving on to 1990, Disney welcomed in the 1990s with the opening of Disneyland Paris, which was then known as Euro Disney. In 1992, it opened to little fanfare, and is something that is felt throughout the company and has had a lasting impact on Disney parks pretty much since then. Even though Disneyland Paris these days is much more well received than it was at the time of opening, it's still something that I definitely think is still thought of when considering new projects.
As they should. You have to learn from your mistakes.
However, back in California, we see the opening of Toontown in 1993. It was inspired by the film Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but also contains many classic Disney cartoon favorites, such as Mickey and his gang of friends, with each having their own homes where you can visit them. Not all of them are traditional homes for sure, like Donkey
No.
Boat.
They are not traditional homes for sure.
Mickey and Minnie's are pretty classic, I'd say.
I don't know any homes that look like that.
That's true. So you got some big furniture. That's true. Of course, Toontown was redone and reopened just a couple years ago.
This year. Last
Was
year.
it this year? That feels like forever ago. But it's still being
Continuously improved.
Yeah, definitely same vibe. Definitely seems like they've scaled back maybe the Roger Rabbit elements a little bit, but Roger Rabbit's still beloved.
Yes, I was honestly surprised to hear that Toontown was inspired by Roger Rabbit.
Yeah, that was really the major influence for them creating it at all,
That's kind of insane.
right? It was
Not that I don't love that movie, because I do, and I desperately wish they would do more films like that with the cross between.
it's expensive.
Oh, I bet.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I bet it's super expensive. But it's so cool. I love bringing those characters into real life like that.
It is cool. It's very novel. It's something that you don't see movies doing very often. Maybe you will for like a short clip. So when you do see it, Space Jam is fun.
Oh,
Which is kind of like almost the opposite, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going into their world. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which that might be fun for them to do in like I don't know. We don't need to get into that right now.
Oh, yes, we do. Please send me into the world of Disney in a film. That'd be amazing.
I love Toontown. When we started talking about nostalgia of being the theme of an episode, that was my very first thought was, okay, I can talk about Toontown.
Yes.
Not like it's a space that I spend that much time in when I'm in a Disney park, but I do like it. I think it's very fun, very imaginative. I am a little sad that they took out one of the details that I really, really liked, which was the Jolly Trolley. I shouldn't. Let me start that over. I'm sorry. I am sad that they no longer have two different details in the park that I really enjoyed as a kid, which was the Jolly Trolley and then the singing fountain that they kind of replaced with the like Dirty Dancing Mickey and Minnie fountain that they have now, which is so cute and very beautiful. I think it looks great with the what is it? The Toon Theater that's behind them. I can't remember the name of it right now. It's a clever name. That's okay. But I do miss stepping on each of those little panels, hearing the music come out of the fountain. Very fun. I'm sure very fun for kids. I think the new one splashes a bunch of water out, so that's also probably really fun for kids.
Yes.
I just don't want to go near it. I'll look at it from far away. The Jolly Trolley at one point did move you throughout the land, but in my memory, I just remember sitting on it and eating ice cream with my family, which is good enough for me. Moving further into the decade, we see the opening of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and Innovations, two attractions that have the benefit of the technology from the previous decade, with Honey, I Shrunk the Kids using a similar 3D technology as Captain EO. However, Innovations was a much-loved attraction and was focused on technological advances, so educating guests on the different developments and available technology, or maybe dreaming up what could be possible. I never experienced Innovations, so I can only speak to it a little bit, but I've heard that people miss it and really adored it.
It was similar to Carousel of Progress in the way that, remember how like, think about, like, the entrance,
Mm-hmm.
like, going in, how there's cast members there standing, and then they open the doors and you go in.
Mm-hmm.
So it was my memory. It's been a really long time, but if you picture that, that was like the pre-show queue.
Okay.
So you would be like standing outside those doors waiting to get in, and you would see Tom Morrow on the screen, and he'd be talking to you about interventions and what you were going to experience when you went inside. And then there was just a whole bunch of different areas for you to explore. There was cars that you could sit in. Um, I'm sure that were sponsored by some company at the
Sure,
time,
sure.
but I don't have like too many super vivid memories, but there were a lot of like interactive
Mhm.
elements that you could partake in, and it was a really cool part of Tomorrowland.
I love that. Feels like it was so on theme, which is something that feels missing from
Yes,
Tomorrowland right
yes,
now.
absolutely.
And I really like Tomorrowland, but that definitely feels like it would have added so much to the experience of the land itself.
And the idea of tomorrow.
Yeah, looking towards the future. Then to close out the decade, we saw the transformation of the treehouse into Tarzan's treehouse, opening, I believe, in 1999. This is the only way I remember the treehouse. I don't remember experiencing it as, was it the Swiss Family Robinson
Yes,
previously?
yes.
Yeah. So, and I haven't even been into the now in its place Tomorrowland treehouse, which is supposed to be a good change. But I liked Tarzan. Tarzan was fun. I enjoyed the little Easter eggs. It scared me to heck when I was a kid with it was like a jaguar that would like snort at you
Oh my god.
or growl. But I liked little Tarzan doing his little signature howl, little scream up in the swinging basket. It was all cute. And they play some of the music from the movie, which we all know is sick.
Arguably the best soundtrack of all time.
Phil Collins didn't have to go that hard.
Phil Collins, we thank you.
But that really wraps up the 1990s. So now we're in the 2000s or the aughts, I think, as some people are calling them. I don't really.
Who is calling it the aught?
A lot of people.
No way.
Yeah.
No. The
Yeah.
aught,
The aughts.
like OT.
I think, I don't want to get into the spelling of it all because I don't.
I'm like, am I saying this right?
People
Like,
have literally said, the Audis.
oh goodness.
I don't know. I'm not asking questions. I'm just merely living. I don't have the capacity to question anything.
I don't think we've mentioned this yet in this episode, but Megan and I are filming or recording together in person for the first time since we've started this podcast. So this is a super, super fun experience for both of us, but I don't think we told you guys that.
No.
So we're normally filming separately on different sides of the state. One of us in Northern California, one of us in Southern California, but we are both together right now in Northern California, and we're getting to film this together in person, which is really fun. But I just thought I would share that with you guys.
Thank you. So this is where I would imagine most of our memories come from, being born in the later half of the 90s decade. But in 2001, we see the opening of Disney's California Adventure, as well as Downtown Disney, which I had no idea. In my brain, Downtown Disney's always existed.
Yeah, I did not realize that it didn't get open until the 2000s.
Yeah, pretty much. From what I understand, because of the opening of California Adventure, because that was essentially them solidifying it being a resort, trying to go for that multi-day resort, getting people to stay on property, extra shopping, things you can do outside of buying a park ticket, incentivizes people to certainly spend more time there, right?
Incentivizing a lot of locals as well to create a new shopping experience. They don't even have to go to the parks. They can still get some Disney magic in.
Exactly. I think there's been many a time where we've grabbed dinner or drinks in downtown Disney
without going to the parks. Absolutely.
Exactly. So it opens in 2001 and on the site of Disneyland's original parking lot.
Okay.
Yeah. Around this time also is where you see the opening of the Mickey and Friends parking structure was which was then later also expanded. But some fun things in this decade that I thought I would include are the Happiest Homecoming on Earth, which was the 50th anniversary celebration of Disneyland Park that took place from 2005 to 2006, lasting about 18 months. Sounded fun. I remember seeing commercials for it when I was a kid. I remember my granddad being like, huh, that's cool. We should go. And me being a tiny child not liking Disneyland, I'm just like, no. Now, I wish I could have. Maybe no. I don't know. I don't think I went during that time, 2005 to 2006.
I remember this vividly because I had a major surgery that year, and I was in first grade, and I had a little boyfriend, and yes, he went to Disneyland for their 50th anniversary, and he came back and brought me all these presents. He brought me a 50th anniversary t-shirt that had all of the characters on it. He got me the gold Mickey ears that have the 50th anniversary on it. He got a mini bow in like it's like hot glued to the top of it so that I would have like the mini and he would have the Mickey. He got me like this light up cup from the Rainforest Cafe, another piece of nostalgia. So I'm very familiar with this year. It was like so sweet that at such a young age you can find just the purest happy like joy from another child wanting to like bring happiness to another child. It doesn't get more pure than that, really.
My
So
gosh,
special.
what a sweet little gem. He's so thoughtful.
He was.
It was like, oh, I think she'd like this. Oh, but maybe she'll like this too. Well, I like this, so I think she should have it as well.
Yes, I'm sure, his family played a role in it, but, Jacob, if you're listening, I remember still, and I think
That's absolutely precious. Precious. To prepare for this 50th anniversary celebration, throughout 2004, many of the attractions, especially the original Disney attractions, were given major renovations in order to, spruce them up, make them
yeah,
look real nice and fancy. It's been 50 years,
yeah,
especially the ones that had been there for all 50 years.
yeah,
Definitely deserve that extra special attention. I thought it was fun that they gave that attention to those very Disney originals like Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean, things that weren't, we think so much about IP these days.
right.
Those things weren't based on them. And for them to give them that attention still is good. I think that's awesome. And then to wrap up the decade, beginning on January 1st of 2010, Disney Parks encouraged the Give a Day, Get a Day. Hosted the Give a Day, Get a Disney Day volunteer program. This was meant to encourage people to volunteer with different participating charities. And in return, they would receive a free Disney day at either a Disneyland resort or at a Disney resort. So either Disneyland or a Walt Disney World park.
That's so cool.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And for that to happen in 2010, I was like, oh,
It's not that long ago.
that's not that long ago. What an amazing deal. I did not find how long it lasted for. It sounded like they had a goal of achieving either 1 million participants or a certain amount of hours worth of volunteering, and then kind of discontinued that deal. It sounded like if you had already signed up for time, then you would still receive the benefits of participating. But I thought it was really cool. I thought it was really interesting. I said that was to end the decade. I guess that's to kick off the following one. But still, thought that was fun.
That is super cool.
Just end on a high note
I love that.
before we come more into that our modern day.
Yes.
That's all for me.
Okay, so to end our segment here, I wanted to bring a little nostalgia back for the both of us. If you could bring back any attraction what would it be and why?
So, even though we're talking about nostalgia, I am going to indulge myself a little and pick an attraction that I've never experienced because I desperately wish I did, which is Alien Encounter
Oh,
at Disney
yes, at
World.
Disney World.
Oh my gosh. I even would take Stitch's Great Escape, even though I don't want it. I desperately want to experience Alien Encounter. It is so weird and so gross and creepy. Why did we make it? I don't know. Because Megan would think it was cool, even though she'll never get to experience it. Maybe. If anybody is unfamiliar, I highly recommend you look it up and see what you can see about it because I think it's really cool. Again, and it's an attraction that was developed to appeal to teenagers or those young adults that maybe want something that's outside of your typical Disney experience. It was seen as too scary, and that's why they got rid of it. You encountered an alien that was accidentally like I don't know how they like transported to that stage area that everyone was sitting around, and then they had kind of similar effects to the ones that you feel in It's Tough to Be a Bug,
Okay.
but like turned up and in a dark theater where somebody's telling you that danger is happening.
Got it.
Wild. I'm here for it. Let me experience it. Bring it back.
Bring it back one time for the one time.
Literally for one day. I'll
Just
be
for one
there.
day.
But what about you?
Well, I was initially going to say the People Mover because being on a ride that goes into another ride, that is super cool
Mhm.
to me. It's like ride inception.
Mhm.
And that's one of my favorite things about riding the train,
Yeah.
even though you can't see it right now, is being able to see inside of Splash Mountain. I really cannot wait, and I hope that this part doesn't get taken out.
I'm sure.
Um, I cannot wait to be able to peek inside of Tiana's Bayou Adventure.
Let me peek.
That's gonna be really cool, and I love the People Mover in Disney World, and we have the tracks, and they're just abandoned, and it feels like such a waste, but that is not going to be my official answer. My official answer is going to be, I wish that we would bring back more live entertainment.
Oh, yeah.
We are so much in desperate need for live entertainment at both parks. The Fantasyland Theater has like a Disney
Mm.
Playhouse-esque event going on for Pixar Fest at the moment. But in California Adventure, you have the Hyperion Theater where there's absolutely nothing going on. And there's been nothing going on since Roger the Musical.
And even that was part-time.
And that was just for a few months. My cat's being really cute right now. Oh my gosh. It was just for a few months, and it was only for a few days a week. I went to the park multiple times while it was going on and didn't get a chance to see it. And it feels like Disney is really not prioritizing much of their live entertainment. And I really think that they need to. I know that people really enjoyed the Aladdin show. People loved it. People also really enjoyed the Frozen show and loved that. And I think it's really unfortunate that that theater is just sitting and going to waste, especially on those hot summer days where you just need more places to relax and cool off and more places for the crowd to disperse.
Mm.
And, you know, not everyone needs to be standing in line for a ride. There can be other things that we can put hundreds of people
Mhm.
in to do. So that would be my answer, is to bring back some more live entertainment.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, it is not only entertaining, something different than being on a typical ride, but it also eats up people's time and takes away from some crowds. As I was researching for my decades, I was reminded of Aladdin's Oasis, which was a dinner show, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, and a dinner show at Disney sounds so cool because, of course, we talked about Fantasmic earlier, and you purchase a dining package, but you're not eating dinner while watching the show.
Right.
You're going to dinner, going to lunch, and then later you go to the show. I think it would be awesome to have a totally separate experience. I don't know where they're doing that, but either way, I think that that would be something great to bring back. In live entertainment overall, I think would be awesome. I didn't get to experience the Hyperion Theater much. I only saw Frozen one time. I think I was with you and Matt, and I only got to see half the show because they had technical problems and had to stop the show after Let It Go, and didn't get to see any more of it. And I would have really liked to see Rogers.
Me too.
It's unfortunate. Yeah, bring it back. I probably won't get Alien Encounter back, but we can make more live entertainment happen.
Hashtag live entertainment is important.
There you go. Any final thoughts before we finish up?
No, just thank you guys so much for listening and for being here. Please rate our podcast, subscribe to it, share it with your friends. We are really looking forward to expanding this thing and creating more content for you guys. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah, we have an Instagram now. Follow us at the Magical Happy Hour on Instagram. If you need a travel agent, Shy is fantastic. Book her through Cheyenne at
VincentVacations.com.
And we'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.